course, the Democrats are going to try to take advantage of anything, the inkling of anything positive. There's the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. Of course, they're claiming a big monumental victory that's going to propel them to who knows where, because it didn't amount to anything. In fact, in Wisconsin, they voted they meaning the people, the sovereign people voted for voter ID. Now you contrast that with the Supreme Court, and you can't quite make sense. How is it that a progressive, liberal, radical leftist judge suddenly takes well, listen to that. That sounded like I'm getting a howl, a shout out. We're going to talk more about that too. We got special guests here today joining us. But how is it that a progressive, radical, liberal, leftist judge ends up basically almost walking away with an election, and the people of Wisconsin vote for voter ID? We're going to cover that today here on the DPB show, but we so do appreciate you joining us. Like, share, subscribe, whether that's on Rumble, on X, on YouTube, or Facebook. We cover many platforms, soon to expand to many more, but as it says, the election results, rinse and repeat. Yes, indeed, we are still struggling as a party, the Republican Party. I claim myself to be a Christian first, conservative second. Then, of course, I vote Republican because I don't know if I could ever bring myself to agree at this point with any of the craziness that's going on with the Democrat Party and everything that they promote and what they stand for and what they get behind, because it has nothing to do with fiscal responsibility. It has nothing to do with truly representing the people, because at the end of the day, government isn't here to be the arbiter of the social agenda of the United States of America. It's not about whether we have enough craziness going on in our country. It's about maintaining civility. It's maintaining the police powers, protecting our borders, making sure that we are a country that is out ahead of everything else that's going on. We want to be a leader of the world. We don't want to be a arbiter for the world, nor do we want to be the arbiter between the progressive branch of the progressive way and the conservative way. Our founders protected our rights through the Constitution. That's the only thing that we should be looking at to make sense of where we're currently at. But we have a lot to cover here today. Obviously, craziness continues to abound. We've got a special guest coming on that's going to break down some of the things that are happening that kind of make it so the Democrats are finding favor, or they're finding success. They're winning at the local levels, meaning mostly in these municipal, township, wards, you name it. That's the area that's their wheelhouse. How do they go about doing it? Well, unfortunately, there are ways that most of the public would be obviously turned off by. In fact, we're seeing it play out. As I said, our special guest, once she pops in here, I know we're having some technical difficulties, it looks like, on getting her into studio, but she can explain it at further length. She put it out on, in fact, I can give you a little heads up. She has it. It's Desi Anderson, and you can find her at Desi for Illinois is her page. Let me make sure that I got that correct. Desi for Illinois, or Desi Anderson for Illinois. Anderson spelled in the traditional way, Aderson for Illinois. Desi has put out a response letter that she received from the Department of Education in regards to her complaint of election interference. And this is the topic of the day, why it is that we continue to see the advantage going to the Democrats and statewide elections, specifically blue states and swing states, not in red states. We know the results that happened in Florida. We were able to retain 2 congressional seats in District 6 and District 1. So that's not something we have to worry about. The red states keep getting redder. The blue states keep getting bluer. There's a reason for that. That's what we want to cover today. And the swing states, they are battling to make sure that they can wrestle away control so they can realize victory. But unfortunately, with voter ID now in Wisconsin, that's not going to be the case. What says you, Ryan, of the Ryan Mack Show?
Well, I would say that every election matters, right? We not just the presidential election. We know the turnout was high in November. Thank God it was. But people have a very hard time voting outside of every 4 years. And the local races, and especially in our neck of the woods in Illinois, in McLean County, they have almost become complacent. Like, oh, well, we got the presidency, we got the House. It's fine. We know our mayoral races in smaller towns might be uncontested. They'll be fine. What's happening is the county seats with larger college towns are being overrun with socialist leaders, and they're stealing up the boards of these counties, and they're stealing up the school boards, and they're putting them in prominent positions to take over local government. What happens? All politics is local, right? Then it starts brewing out. And now our county, which once was a very good conservative county government level,
85-15, Ryan.
Yeah,
at one time it was 85-15.
Yeah, and has now become controlled by I don't even know what they call themselves, democratic socialist type, progressives.
Progressive. Those, ultimately, what they call themselves is irrelevant because it's more about what their agenda, what are they pushing. They want to always point to Project 2025 with Trump, and that it's not Trump's platform. His platform was based on Agenda 47. If they really want to learn about Trump and what he wants to get accomplished here in the next 4 years, is Agenda 47. Not Project 2025.
Right.
That's what I think that the Dems are trying to hide is what is their project. Here, I've got a little quote from Charlie Kirk. And if you are in the central Illinois area, because we're going to talk about the counties of Champaign, which is the county where the University of Illinois is. And also we're going to talk about the county of Peoria, which they do have a university too. They have Bradley University. They have Illinois Central College. And then, of course, McLean County. But this is from Charlie Kirk. Charlie will be here next Tuesday, so the 8th. He will be on campus. So if you haven't reached out to Turning Point USA, go in there, get your little ticket or your sign in so that they know exactly what to expect and that you know where to be going the day of the event, which is 12 o'clock on the Illinois State University quad. Then he heads over to Champaign, the University of Illinois, where it's, I think, 7:30 is the time that he's going to be there. I'm assuming it's also going to be on the quad, but it could be in a different facility because daylight burns late today or this time of the year, but not as late as Charlie might go. But here's a quote from Charlie. We did a lot in Wisconsin, but we fell short. We must realize and appreciate that we are the low propensity party now. Low propensity party, just a little background on that, meaning those are people that don't go out and vote frequently. The party has been remade. Special elections and off-cycle elections will continue to be a problem without a change of strategy. Basically saying, we got to do things different. And that's what Trump showed us how to do it differently. Too big to rig, right? We are the party of welders, waiters, and plumbers. We are the party of people who work with their hands, who shower before and after work. There's a concept. Politics is an afterthought for many of our supporters. They have common sense and American values, but they are voters who must be chased. That happens to be our guest host today's word. I didn't really like it at first, but the more I hear it, the more I do appreciate it. We have to chase these voters. It's ballot chasing. ballot chased, however you want to refer to it. Democrats have become the college indoctrinated, institutionalized, and government dependent high propensity party, meaning these are people, they live for politics. Everything that they do is about politics, and they blended the social aspect of life with their political way of life. They live for politics. It is their religion. You may hate Donald Trump, but he resurrected the dead, GOP, back to life. Voters who weren't on anyone's data rolls came out of the woodwork to vote for Donald Trump. Our movement must begin to fully fund the infrastructure to match the Democrat machine. Our ideas are better. They're actually popular, but we need to match like for like. We need to out-organize Democrats. We need to match their fundraising advantage. Let Wisconsin be a wake-up call. Let it be a call to return to the front lines. We won in November, but to save the Republican, we must string together multiple victories, and it starts in 2026. That is Charlie Kirk. Like I said, he will be here in Bloomington Normal, Central Illinois, next Tuesday. That is the 8th of April. By all means, go out to Turning Point USA, get connected and get to one of those events if you happen to be in proximity to either Champaign or Bloomington Normal, Illinois. Lot said there, Ryan. He nails it. Bottom line is this: we've got to change up strategies because, as you alluded to, we continue to rinse and repeat and do the same thing over and over again in these local elections, which are truly the most important elections, our school boards, our townships, our mayoral race, our city council, because that's where true government is happening. And as we see, they're just running roughshod over getting referendums, tax increases, because they keep just sliding them in there.
Where are referendums?
Yeah.
I mean, as a party as a whole, we have not put anything on the ballots locally for a long time that I remember.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's because they just keep pushing these through. And our guest, who I see has joined us now, she was able to get connected. I'm going to bring her on stage. Well, before I bring her on, I'll let you know a little bit about her. Desi Anderson has actually, she is one of the most dynamic, upcoming young, which is cool because young means in our party, I believe, as the grand old party, it's anybody under 50. Well, she's much younger than 50 years of age. In fact, she's younger than 40 years of age. But Desi has tried to thrown her hat into 2 races. She wasn't successful in her run for the state Senate seat against Dave Kaler back here in 22, and now turned a very valiant effort in 2024. Unfortunately, there are a lot of things that she didn't plan on that took place, and that's why she's joining us today, because she's going to break down a lot of different things about campaigns, why it is we're seeing the movement we have, especially in areas of the state like Champaign, Peoria County, and McLean County. Desi Anderson, welcome to the DPB show.
Hey guys,
look at that. You got a great background.
Desi,
you heard the build up, so now you're gonna have to deliver.
Oh goodness, that's quite a build up. Thank you. Great to be on here. We've got some movement happening post election that we found in the 91st specifically and in the 46th that I am addressing. Not only is it a McLean County issue, but like you said, it's happening in other counties and nationwide. It's a nationwide concern that we are currently litigating.
Well, and I did see on your social media, while we were waiting, I was telling people to go to Desi Anderson for Illinois, that you did post the response from the Department of Education. I know that we're not going to go into a lot of the details because it is pending, but at least you're seeing movement on your complaint that you put forth to the Department of Education. And this is something that you and your husband kind of started to realize going through the Senate race leading up to the state rep race, you knew that things weren't quite really matching up. I mean, we found that out because it simultaneously, as you were running for state senate and moving into the run for state rep, there was a school board election, and they started to rattle about voting yes then to bring in more money, which I think there's so many things that you could probably address today, but those are two of the biggest ones. Is what they're doing at the local level, how they're managing to turn out, because that particular referendum in 23, they tried it on the fall ballot, then they turned around and came back, so that in 22 they tried to get it pushed through. It was unsuccessful. They immediately backed up as the powers to be do within the Democrat Party, and then they tried to go against, or try to put it out there in the consolidated election, which, knowing that the numbers of voters during the consolidated election versus a midterm or a general election in a midterm year or a general election in a presidential year, that the turnout would be less in a consolidated year, therefore their chances of getting it pushed through, and they were successful. However, what does it mean to the taxpayers? Because ultimately everything that was put together in this thing behind me, this Constitution, is about the sovereignty of the people, and it just fails to be about the people. Desi, that's what I want to hear about.
Yeah, so let me back up and address a little bit what you started hinting at. When I ran in 2022, first time candidate, business owner, just fed up with how things were going on. I was in the height of COVID. And decided to throw my hat into a challenging race. We knew it would be challenging, a long time incumbent that has been in Peoria politics truly for 40 plus years, longer than I have been alive. And looking at the student housing data, we started focusing in on certain precincts for a reason. We were picking up trends. Going into 2024, we knew what to look for. We had a better idea, a little bit more clarity. And what we were seeing coming out of ISU was truly astonishing. When the president of ISU did an interview with the Panagraph on December 18th, talking about their partnership with All In, the NGO, and truly giving credit to these NGOs for these so-called grassroots efforts of having students come out and impacting the election outcomes for these tight races. That's what happened. And so started on peeling the layers back a little bit, trying to figure out, identify what's going on with the student data. How do I get access to the student data from a campaign perspective? When I'm running in the 91st district, I've got 4 universities in my district: ISU, IWU, and ICC. That represents about 42,000 students that are in my district. Truly don't know who those individuals are unless they've previously voted and they are in the county clerk system. And a lot of them haven't voted. They're new on campus, or they've transferred out. And so that was going to be our challenge: is how do you make voter contact? I'm not allowed to send a mailer to student housing, not allowed to text message, not allowed to door knock. How do you identify those 42,000 students that are enrolled in your district? And those group is going to determine the outcome. And there's a thing called FERPA. It's the Family Educational Privacy Rights Act. And what it does is it basically acts like what we would consider HIPAA when it comes to the medical records. Student records are protected. What does FERPA protect? It protects their DOB, their mailing address, their cell phone numbers, anything that could be identifiable to that individual to show their identity. That is all protected under FERPA. And so, which is great, right? Students then aren't being solicited by third-party individuals like campaigns or whatever. But what happens when the university violates that? What happens when students don't know that their own university handed their data away and trust has now been broken? And so that's what we uncovered is this past cycle, we narrowed it down to about 10 precincts, and historic numbers coming out of those precincts. Those 10 precincts determine the outcome of not just my race, but county board races in McLean County. I currently reside in Woodford County. I'm a PC in Woodford County. And so I'm involved in McLean, got very involved because of my business, but I also am actively engaged in Woodford County. But what we noticed is ISU and Heartland Community College have made it now public. They have talked about their partnership with these NGOs. They have now shared student data without student consent to left-leaning organizations. When I say left-leaning organizations, I'm talking about Barack Obama's Civic Nation. Barack Obama's Civic Nation in the state of Illinois, this is not a McLean County issue, this is a statewide, nationwide issue. Roughly alone in Illinois, almost 500,000 of student data was shared illegally without consent for election strategy and voter tracking of students. Their voting behavior is being tracked by Civic Nation, by their partners of the National Student of Learning out of Tufts University, Boston, Massachusetts. Why are these folks so invested in races in McLean County or anywhere, honestly? Why are students being tracked down? Why are their behavior being studied? And why are universities violating FERPA? So we uncovered that we have now filed a lawsuit, a federal complaint, I should say. There's multiple steps that our legal team has taken, and it's a multi-state, Illinois leading the way. It involves Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Illinois. This is a national crisis when it comes to election integrity. This has been happening since 2016. And quite frankly, if we don't address this illegal data sharing of student without proper consent, I don't know how you move forward when it comes to the election integrity process.
Well, the first point that I think that, I mean, so many things are happening around what you guys have been able, and I say you guys, I mean your team, Desi for Anderson for Illinois, with your husband, and obviously your legal team now, and a whole host of other people who contributed to your campaigns. I mean, they have been wronged because is it fair that someone had you? This is why I call it election interference, because election interference is when you truly give somebody an advantage over another party. I mean, that's evident that that's what took place here. And you're walking this out. You filed the complaint. You did get a response from the Department of Education, which I think I can put up on. Oh, there it is. Desi Anderson for Illinois. See, I got it shared there. I bet you can't read that fine print. I probably would have to. Can you
if
see
you
that?
go down,
Yeah.
if
Well,
you
she
go down to
alluded
that
to it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. That is out at Desi Anderson's Desi Anderson's Facebook page, Desi Anderson for Illinois. So you can go out there and look at that. There, Mrs. Producer put it up in so you could all see it. But so they responded to the complaint. I know there's an additional response. First, they responded to educators, then they responded to the universities as a whole, correct? And what did they basically put them on notice that they were violating federal law and the statutes, and they needed to make amends.
Correct. So what our complaint did, it was actually American First Policy Institution, AFPI. Chad Wolf is the executive director. He was Donald Trump's former border czar last administration. They actually picked up my complaint, saw it, and their legal team went out of the way and made an additional memo that they attached to my complaint and hand delivered it to the secretary. And the secretary was not fully aware of the operations of what was happening on college campuses.
Right.
Nationwide, 10.5 million student data in 24 cycle was handed over to the left,
Right.
to the nonprofits. Couple questions emerge. One, who has custody of chain of that data now? The data we found out actually goes through multiple NGOs. Do those NGOs have the ability to now go ahead and sell it to third-party data? Where is the transparency of from the university? Who now enforces FERPA? Department of Education is supposed to be enforcing FERPA. That's why we went directly to the Department of Education. Now, does the Department of Education continue to investigate and say, whoa, this is more than what we realized? Do they assign it to the DOJ for additional probe? We're not sure. We're definitely the case is constantly progressing, and it's there's a lot of moving parts. This is not an easy thing that we've uncovered. This is a multifaceted machine that they have clearly perfected. I mean, they've been doing it since 2016, and we're now calling them out on it. But it is quite alarming when you're talking about election interference to the point. One of the universities, one of the colleges, on their action plan for this NGO had my opponent's name on it.
Of course it did.
So I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. Sharon Chung is considered a community leader and organizer for All In for one of the colleges.
Weird.
So is Senator Dave Kaler for a nonpartisan organization. Then you go over to the other colleges. They're listing folks as their leaders, and they didn't give consent either. So it's one violation after a violation of people not having proper consent. And so the question becomes, when a student enrolls in the university, can they trust the university to protect them and enforce FERPA?
Well, we're going to hit upon a lot of that here today on the DPB show. I so appreciate you joining us today, Desi. I just was looking at the chat. Obviously, shout out to my beautiful daughter who was in an airport in Nashville and heading off to Texas to see a friend. She said, have a good show, guys, off to Texas. Bob, always appreciate Berwyn Bob from the Berwyn Township. He knows a lot about Chicago politics because his dad was involved as one of the union bosses under the Daley administration up there back when Democrats truly were Democrats before they became whatever it is now they are. Pam, always good to see you. She was giving you a shout out, Desi, saying that she would have loved to have been in your district and voted for you. And then coming down here, we have a question from Chad. Has AFPI received a response from the secretary or any of the nonprofits? I don't know if that's a question you can answer. And then finally, always good to see Donnie Henry jumping in. We don't have free and fair elections in this country. The two parties actively prevent anyone outside of their organizations from participating in the political process. It starts there and extends to elaborate schemes like this. I commend Desi for doing something about it. You're right, Donnie. And Donnie, the DPB show, I've always been a proponent of equal ballot access for anybody, because I think it does create the craziness we're seeing, and on both sides of the aisle. I'm not saying that Republicans have always walked the primrose path, because they haven't. There are things that Republicans have done to gain an unfair advantage in the electoral process. What is prevalent now is, I believe it is just the unit party, because I think that we're seeing it play itself out of who's in our leadership positions, especially when it comes to a state like Illinois, which happens to be controlled mostly by the Democrat Party. Desi, this law came into place, and I know that you could probably comment upon that. is you put this out on your post. What happened in 2014 forever changed the political landscape in Illinois. Governor Pat Quinn signed legislation that would change the course of the elections. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, let me address Chad's question real quick.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
AF-
I did jump the gun on you. I
That's all
gave
right.
you an option to answer the question. I already moved on. Sorry, Chad. We're going to get to your question.
AFPI, American First Policy Institute, that letter is a response that they shared with AFPI and our legal team. AFPI is working with us in regards to this issue. So hopefully that helps you respond to that. In regards to Donnie Henry's comment, absolutely, the ballot access for just independent candidates in Illinois is very more challenging. For example, they're required to get more petition signatures than a Democrat or a Republican for that district, and so
exponentially more, like thousands and thousands for the most minute office. I mean, not minute. That's
right. Well, I mean,
for offices, lesser offices, like even for township races, for mayoral races and independent. Well, they're nonpartisan races, so I got to hold on.
Nonpartisan, in quote.
We'll back up, not including the mayoral races, but township races. If an independent wanted to come into a township race, they're required to get more signatures for than a Democrat or Republican, especially as you move up the chain through the county boards and through the state reps and state senate runs.
But why is that the case?
It's a great
that
great
doesn't
question.
make any sense. If you're going to level the playing field, it's not. But how is that going to make it easier to do anything? I don't understand.
It's not. It doesn't. It creates more barriers, right? Illinois is one of the least friendliest states when it comes to ballot access for candidates. So in regards to 2014, this post, a lot of folks, as I was door knocking, would tell me, "Oh, I remember when McLean County used to be so red. What happened to it? What happened to it?"
Mm-hmm.
There's multiple things that happened to it, right? I'm only identifying one of many factors, I believe, and I'm identifying this because I'm close to it. I have close proximity. I ran into that in this district, and I can only speak from my experience from a candidate perspective. In 2014, Governor Pat Quinn signed a piece of legislation that allowed same-day registration to take place in Illinois. And this legislation, of course, came from the Dems, signed it, and then allowed college students to change their permanent residency where they were able to move it to their housing accommodation, living quarters. And so what that means was the first time in 2014, ISU enrollment, that student population, today it's almost, it's right around 21,000. You look at IWU, it's not as big. It's actually very small compared to that. But now those students are allowed to participate in these local referendum issues and our local issues, which I've got no problem because allow them to express their voice, allow them to participate in what we call democracy. My concern is when you come and you transfer to ISU for one semester, you vote and you now leave or you graduated. What's creating is really an uneven representation of permanent residents and permanent business owners that participate into the local economy here in regards to paying their property tax, whatever it may be. Now, are students also paying into the local economy? Absolutely. It looks a little different than what the permanent residents pay into.
Right.
But what that piece of legislation did was absolutely change the electorate map of McLean County.
I mean, how many students we have? 21,000?
21,000 students. So imagine if they had 50% voter turnout at ISU.
Right. And even half of that or a third of that votes one
But
way.
they're starting to get there, Ryan, right?
Right,
They're starting
right.
to do that with the help of these with the
Mhm.
help of the nonprofits. So my why I address that is saying, hey guys, this actually has been on our radar for 20 since 2014. If I live in a county and I've got 3 major universities in my county, and I know this is happening, in 2014, I'm talking about an action plan, knowing this is gonna change the electorate
Mhm.
map of the county. And honestly, if I didn't find this out, I don't know if this would be getting addressed in McLean County.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would be either. You know, you said something earlier, Desi, which I think
Yeah.
is so impactful to not only local politics, but statewide and federal politics. They've become masters. I've said they've mastered, they've become master manipulators of all things. And it's just the data. And as you said, to gain an advantage, whether it's the maps,
Mhm.
whether it's utilizing the student population, throughout the land, throughout the United States, especially specifically in these larger university towns. The other thing is, which this is how we kind of know, and I saw Chad comment. I think I can get his comment up there again. Mrs. Producer probably will put it up there. Yes, I watched a half dozen students get registered with questionable citizenship status.
Mm.
Now, that's what he's observing. Is that true? Well, this little video that I want to share, this got uncovered as Elon was up in Wisconsin campaigning ahead of April 1st. And one of the people that has been part of really looking at data uh, was with Steve Ducey on Fox News. And this is what he basically had to say. And I want to listen. This is only about 46 seconds, but it's worth the listen to.
That's a jaw-dropping number. Where did all those people come from?
Well, it made my jaw drop too when I saw it. We were in Social Security looking for fraud, waste, and abuse, and to do that, we actually looked at the enumeration system, the system by which people get numbers in America, and we found that there were just about 5+ million of them that came to the country as illegals, were giving various forms of parole or allowed in the country, and they got through an automatic system, Social Security numbers, to get into our benefit systems. And we tracked that through and found that they were on the benefit programs. And just because we were curious, we then looked to see if they were on the voter rolls. And we found in a handful of cooperative states that there were thousands of them on the voter rolls, and that many of them had voted.
That's a jaw-dropping number.
And
Where did all those people come from?
That's what
Well,
I think what we're dealing with here is I don't know why that didn't shut off, but let me shut it off real quick here. Sorry about that. But that's if you saw that graphic behind him, it started in about 20. Well, and really, as you just alluded to, Desi, if you wouldn't have been able to uncover this on the university campuses, and Doge wasn't working on scrutinizing where federal dollars are being allocated to, because there's a lot of suspect to how are these organizations funded throughout the United States. Their ultimate goal is to make a one-party state and to basically limit ballot access, but also limit the ability for competitive races.
Right.
And they're doing it in so many different ways. So they're just not coming at it from one way. You've uncovered what you have done through the universities and FERPA, but really this is going on at levels that are crazy. Now you have these computer geeks, cybersecurity gurus out there looking at this data going, wait a minute. And this all started to come to light around, like you said, 2014, 2016. So they were obviously building something. They were looking at an objective of how to solidify their advantage, not only in local elections, but in state elections and federal elections.
Yeah, I mean, the real issue is it's the students, right? The students are
Right.
actually victims of this. You've got students that are clearly upset that their university didn't protect their data and gave it away. Why? Because these students have door knocked for Republican candidates, right? Their values may not align with these organizations that they have coming in where they're sharing their personal data.
Mhm.
You know, they have to write an actual physical consent letter for their parents to have access to their records. It doesn't matter if mom and dad are paying tuition. They literally, because of FERPA exists, you know, John Smith of Naperville has to write, you know, consent and says, yes, mom and dad can access my student records. How is that not being done? How is it okay for Barack Obama's organization to have access to the student data without consent? And so I think the onus falls on the universities. What role? Clearly, they had a major role when they signed off. We found the contract. We have the legal contract of what data they signed off to this organization. And it's not just your standard, oh, you know, John Smith, and here's his school email. No, they've got the race, the sex, the field of study, their DOB, their permanent mailing address, their school address, and they're tracking that individual, and students have no idea that they are being researched on. Their voting behavior is being researched on. To the point, these NGOs, and you know, this will come out in the litigation, but to the point where the professors would do PowerPoint presentation to a specific field of study program of students if they believe those field of students program, take ag students, for example. If they felt like the ag students at ISU weren't engaged enough at civic engagement, a professor could request that a civic engagement comes in and does a PowerPoint and make sure these students are getting out to vote. So it's what's that created is it's created nonstop soliciting all year round now, 24/7 campaigning, which is not allowed. No candidate or campaign can do that.
Right.
McLean County GOP, hopefully the McLean County Democrats don't have access to that private data. That private data, no political campaign organization should have access to that data unless it's been explicit and that student or the individual has given full consent and understand how their data is being used. That has not happened. And you know what? Students could say, oh, I don't care if they have my data. I'll sign it off. Great. We want to make sure it's a consensual relationship. They know what they're giving away and they know what the data is being used for. There's some folks that aren't going to care. That's fine.
Right.
But
Sure.
the reality is we as a society, and it wasn't the Trump administration, this is a long time provisional act of FERPA. It's been around forever that student records are protected just like a medical record.
So what's the workaround then? Because you're not going to be able to change the residency at this time to make sure that people that aren't residents of Bloomington Normal or even the county are allowed to vote. They should be voting where they reside or absentee ballot, whatever. What is the workaround as a candidate locally?
Yeah, so that's not even the remedy that we're asking for, right? The State Board of Election, our legislators in Springfield will determine our election process. Great. That's why we have our own state sovereignty. What we're asking for, the legal remedy is these universities are not supposed to be engaging with nonprofits and NGO for election strategies and voting and tracking students. That's not what elections are about. And we are requesting that they stop sharing student data. It is illegal. If you're going to share it to everybody, and everyone has the same access to make the same voter contact opportunity.
Equal access. So,
Yes.
so one of the things that you alluded to, and you're seeing this play out, that video, obviously, as we're getting more information, uncovering more. Most of those NGOs and non-for-profits, no different than when the congressional hearings took place here last week, and they brought forth NPR they were querying about how many journalists do you have on staff that you hired vote Democrat or are Democrat sympathizers. Well, that's what these NGOs are, right? They're not made up of conservative Republican people. So you don't even have equal access to be part of these NGOs and non-for-profits because they go about appointing their own teams or whatever they call them, leaders or whatever they refer to them as. I know you had said that earlier on, Desi, that most of these NGOs are made up, all these other entities are made up of mostly people who they're favorable to as far as the candidates that they want to see win.
Yep.
Correct. That's like Charlie Kirk's group coming into ISU next week and asking ISU to hand over student data so they can get out the vote efforts.
Right.
They're a political action committee. Why would right? Just like these other organizations, right? They're a nonprofit. Well, no, right? They would say, "Are you kidding?" So why is it okay then for a university to have Civic Nation, which everybody knows that is not a nonpartisan, that is not a partisan, or that is a very partisan organization. That is Barack Obama's organization, which he developed and used for his campaign when he was running for president. Not a single Republican sits on their board. Right. You're going to tell me this is a
bipartisan effort,
right? Just a civic engagement thing, it's not.
There would be an uproar right now at ISU if people knew Charlie Kirk had their data and Republicans were using the data for get out the vote efforts. And it's I wouldn't even promote that, right? Even if I am a Republican, I don't promote that kind of stuff. It's got to be fair.
Well, it's controlled, and it is somewhat as we're looking at this thing unfold, they control the data, therefore they control the mindset, and they're able, I think that the response, the complaint, and I could throw it back up there again, Linda McMahon is who I think penned that, or at least her staff did, and she mentioned it has created this indoctrination. It has allowed this thing to expand and grow feet, which is what Tufts University, I think, intended to do when they started down this road. Is that correct?
Yeah. So Tufts University, the National Student of Learning and Engagement, actually was funded from Barack Obama when he was as a president of the United States. His administration gave him special funding for their university to do this voting behavior research. And so it has continued since then. It's only grown. The reality is what's happening. It's diluted. The local residents, permanent residents now have been disenfranchised in this process.
Yes.
So that's the main concern. Come and enjoy the democracy aspect. Please vote, but make it fair and make it to, a Republican student should have the same access to know which Republican candidates that they could vote on campus, just as much as a Democrat student can know which Democrat candidates that they can support. We're not giving that data.
Yeah.
And campaigns spend thousands of dollars, David, thousands of dollars on data. Data is one of the most expensive things to pay for in a campaign.
Well, and what you point out there, Desi, I think is critical to the democratic way, to, as you said earlier, democracy. If you're really wanting to promote what democracy means, it's the free flowing of ideas and thoughts, and it's having the open conversation back and forth to basically see how do we move our economy, how do we move for the betterment of education, because what we're seeing, we're not getting a return on our investment, hence the reason that there is the Department of governmental efficiency. You're seeing more and more complaints like you're filing. I don't believe that Desi Anderson and the other principals to this particular complaint are the only ones on a nationwide basis. I know that there was Senate Mr. Lee from Utah. Is that right? Is that where
Mike Lee? Yeah,
Mike Lee.
Yeah.
He had something to say about this, right? You are a little more versed than I am about that. Shout out real quick for you. Get into that, Desi. Cristo, always good to see you. I saw it all the time while I was on the left. I'm not saying that the information isn't being used for voting reasons, but the organizers are most likely involved with the McLean County Democrat. It's always good to have somebody whose eyes are open and had seen what was going on. He has taken a lot of heat the last couple of elections because he has been very forthright. I always say that, Cristo, we need to get you involved into running for office. That's what we need to get him involved doing. But go ahead, Desi.
Yes, Senator Mike Lee addressed this. This was also an issue in Utah, I would assume, where he provides constituent services for his district as a state senator. This is a nationwide systematic issue. We were able to figure it out. I'm reading Cristo's comment. Organizations will ask people at events held on campus to sign up to keep in touch with the organization. Students provide name, emails, and phone numbers. Yes, we can do that. That is legal. Right. GOP, we have the opportunity. I was doing that. That's how we were able to make tremendous leads on voter turnout for ISU in those precincts. That we need to be doing that. We should be doing that all year round, not just when we have competitive races. But that is legal, Cristo. But
that's what Charlie's doing right now. I mean, correct. When Charlie has an event at the University of Illinois or any campus or the ISU, any campus across the nation, that's what this whole entire tour is about, is that he's having students or people, community activists, sign up, give the data out so that they can query and they know where these people are at, right? He prefers the students because that's his wheelhouse, but he'll take any of the data he can get.
Yeah, and hopefully there's a transparent way. I'm sure there's a disclaimer where students know that their data could be shared to Republican candidates or whatever the Republican cause or conservative cause may be. But no, this I know we're getting close on time. We're looking forward to move on this litigation. There is more to come. This is not just a one-time response from the secretary. We are asking for a full remedy. So when 26 comes, we're not engaging in illegal activities when it comes to election integrity. Right. We're just not going to deal with it. And we've got people, we've got great group of supporters throughout Central Illinois that are invested to see this come through. We will, and send a message home that we've got to do things the correct way.
Well, and as I read earlier, and I don't know, Charlie Kirk came out and put out a statement following the day after and basically said we have to change things up. If any of you missed it, obviously go back, do the rewind on the DPB show at Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, or X, and hear this out, because Desi's going to come back and keep us apprised of where things are going. But that is the battle cry. We've got to change things up. We are chasing these voters. You're the first person who said chase. And obviously, I know that was handed down to you, Desi. But that's how important it is, because the new modern Republican Party is the working class party. It is the low propensity party, because there are so many other things that I think Republicans do than collectivism, because they don't. Republicans don't do collectivism. Do we need to do a better job at getting the data? by all means. Do we need to do a better job of working elections every day of every year? Because ultimately, what we found out now, they hid behind consolidated elections.
Mhm.
They want it because it's the law. I know that our friend Kevin Lauer will tell us it's according to the General Assembly, we have nonpartisan elections. Nonpartisanship is a myth. It doesn't exist. That's why we have to have preparation, and we need to be walking out a plan every day of every year, because the Democrats do it. They don't take a day off.
Mhm.
They are constantly moving and advancing in ways that we now have found out through universities, whether that's engaging in the student body or being out in the community and the different efforts. You know, Democrats will show up at every event.
Mhm.
You name it, they're going to be
Handing
there.
out cookies and brownies and T-shirts on election day.
Well, hey, yours truly, Desi down there was having Chick-fil-A sandwiches and gondolas, but
I
it's
was not on election day.
not on election
is-
day. Not on
No,
election
That's
Right.
the key. That's
Right.
the key. I did a lot of meet and greet tabling
Yes,
events
that's
at
quite
ISU.
different. Yeah.
And if we're handing out swag, what swag is swag. I don't care if it comes in the form of a Chick-fil-A sandwich or an Avanti's gondola.
Yeah.
It's 40 days of early voting. I am meeting and trying to meet and engage as many people as I can. When it comes to election day, absolutely not. That is called influence.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you want to say, oh, well, handing out Chick-fil-A could be influence? Yeah. You're
Mhm.
handing out a hat or a sweatshirt? I don't care what form it comes in, right? The
Mhm.
Democrats do it, Republicans do it. It's the same. On election day, there's an issue. You don't do it on election day. Never have, never will I. But did I take advantage of the 40 days of early
Oh,
voting on
absolutely.
campus? Oh, absolutely. That's right. And my numbers showed it. We could have, we could have lost by larger numbers, and we
Mhm.
didn't.
Yeah. Well, and obviously, if we can change things on the federal level to do something to limit that, obviously the General Assembly in Illinois is going to have to work around the what comes down from the federal government if we go to a mandatory voter ID, which would be a good step, right? Because now you have to show ID
Right.
versus everything else that's been going on, where you're bringing in receipts from the corner grocery store that has your credit card number or something like that. I'm being facetious, but we need to tighten the controls. 40 days is a long time for early voting. 14 days for adjudication, meaning you have 14 days after election day. They have to make sure that they have all the votes collected and accounted for that were in place by the end of election day. They have a certain drop dead, but unfortunately, because there is 14 additional days, that has somewhat gotten a little loose, and we're not necessarily sticking to all of the codes, which are 628 pages of the Illinois Code of Elections is out there that you can look at if you really want to get bored to death. But there's a lot to do. And Desi, we appreciate you. Obviously, we are here at the top of the hour, but we always end the show in a prayerful way. And so I do want to pray. I also want to make sure that that our audience knows that you can go out. Desi's very active on social media. You can follow along with her at Desi Anderson for Illinois. That is her Facebook page. I don't know if she has an X presence or not, but that's a good one. The Facebook one is good because there's
Yep, I am on X. Desi Anderson.
Desi Anderson on X. Your .com Desi Anderson for Illinois. I'm assuming that's still up. My Mrs. Producer is putting that up. If not, just go to Desi Anderson for Illinois at Facebook. It instantly populates. If you put Desi's name in, spelled DESI, Anderson in the traditional way. I say that because it's son rather than sin. ADERSON. Go out, check Desi out. Ryan, You didn't get a lot in. It was like the trying to follow the puck today.
Yeah, I'm all alone in the house, so it's me and the dog for a moment.
Well, and Desi has her little one is down napping right now, so
Yeah,
at least
that's
she
good
made
timing.
it all the way through the DPB show, so she didn't have to bow out because she had so much to say.
Well,
Hey, Ryan, I'm going to close this out in prayer.
let's do
Dear
it.
eternal and gracious Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this time. Lord, we're just mumbling, fumbling, and bumbling through this earth. And we know that you have a higher calling for all of us, but yet you call us to be good stewards, to be civically involved, and to understand the civic engagement that we're part of. No matter how complex and how convoluted it gets, Lord, continue to guide us, continue to lead us, continue to give us the strength to stand most of all for the truth. That's all we want. We want the truth, not only for Democrats, we want the truth for Republicans. We want the truth for everyone, and we want that to be shared equally. We pray all these things in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. All right.
Amen.
Desi, how we end the show is you'll stay around for a couple seconds because we like to have the after show. Our audience has gotten to realize that, but I always end it by saying that I love all the people that participated today. I love them. Ryan will say,
I love them.
you love them. And you can say, I love you. You say
I love you.
our audience. I just like, she's like, you really say that to
This
your
is
audience?
really weird.
This is really well. But
Sorry,
I
was
say,
not anticipating that.
I know. I say, I love you. Brian says, we love you, or I love you. And then I say, but Jesus loves you more. I always end the show with that. Desi, once again, thank you. And we look forward to having you back soon, sooner than later. And to my audience, we bid you farewell.